Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. In the last two episodes, we talked about unforgiveness and how adopting a forgiveness mindset leads to emotional healing and improves our quality of life. I know how real the struggle is to forgive and move on, especially when it comes to making ourselves vulnerable and running the risk of sustaining additional wounds and offenses. I also know how forgiveness empowers us to confidently reclaim our peace, happiness, and self-worth. I'm grateful you're here with me as we continue down this healing path. If you're done letting unforgiveness steal your peace, joy, and direction in life, may this 5-part series help you level up your self-love game as you continue to restore your inner warrior to boldly live with fierce confidence. As I mentioned in the last episode, forgiveness is a complex concept and something many of us struggle with. For this reason, I've broken down this series into 5 parts to give each one of the defining elements its own breathing space to fully open itself up. In this 3rd episode, you'll get a deeper understanding of how forgiveness works when we fear vulnerability and reopening wounds. You'll hear about my own struggles, trials, and successes in the face of vulnerability and rehashed offenses and hurts. And you'll learn how to operate with a forgiveness mindset that empowers you as it works to strength train and restore your inner warrior. In the remaining 2 episodes in this series, we'll explore the need for justice and accountability, moving beyond our internal barriers and negative emotional reactions to rebuild our forgiveness mindset. I put this Restore Your Inner Warrior series together with power-packed tools that will help you strengthen your inner warrior and overcome the things holding you back from living your most beautiful, best life. If you're ready to boldly step into a life with improved happiness and confidence, turn off those distractions running in the background so you can supercharge your inner healing journey with this next episode. And for all of you lovely ladies who are already walking down this restoration path with me, welcome back. If you haven't already joined my free Facebook group, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood, I encourage you to do so. Here's a safe space to share stories, get tips, and find community. And if you go on and you see the poll that's up at the top of my page there, if you just answer one of the questions, you'll be automatically entered in for your chance to win a one-on-one free coaching session with me that I'm about to start in the next couple of weeks. So to recap from last episode, our quality of life depends on developing a forgiveness mindset. Living with unforgiveness infects every area of our life, like a parasite that sucks the nutrients from our body and makes us sick. It literally makes us sick, the same way a parasite does. That's right. Unforgiveness infects all areas of our physical and our emotional health, while it also weakens our heart, mind, spirit connection that holds our quality of life together. So if you've tuned into the other episodes in this series, you'll remember me saying we've got our heart, we've got our mind, and we've got our spirit, and we trifold those together. And when they are put together, they're this super powerful weaved rope. And when they're individual, they can break down very easily. They just don't have the same strength. So one of the concepts in this series is understanding how this forgiveness mindset helps you strengthen that trifold cord. A forgiveness mindset, on the other hand, is when we consciously choose to let go of the negative emotions that we have for the people who have hurt or offended us. So I want to just put on the brakes and back up really quick here and just emphasize we're speaking about the negative emotions that we have attached to the people who have hurt or offended us.
So it's very important that you make that connection there. Just hold on to that, put it on the back burner, and this will start to make more sense as we move through the series. That one point right there will start to now emerge itself and take on a bigger meaning. I just wanted to take a second to point that out. It allows us to live in freedom as we cut ourselves free from the dead, toxic weight that unforgiveness is. It's that toxic cocktail that, again, we drink hoping to make the other person sick, and the only person we're making sick is ourselves. Although, when we get toxic enough from drinking it over a long period of time, we certainly will become a toxic force that does affect everything and everyone that we come in contact with. Forgiveness does not let the other people off the hook or let them get away with anything. You got to keep remembering that. That's not what forgiveness is about. It's about you cutting yourself free from those negative emotions that you've attached to the individual who has offended or hurt you. We don't forget or ignore the offense. We also don't forget or ignore the chronic behaviors and the chronic abuses and the chronic offenses. That's not at all what I'm trying to insinuate here. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Our fear of making ourselves vulnerable to being rewounded or offended. I know how real this struggle is. If you tuned into last episode, you heard me talk about being thrown into a series of events with a certain circle of individuals that I belong to, and I constantly experience the sense of being excluded from, lots of different interactions that would typically involve me, but they don't involve me. And then when I'm saying, hey, why aren't you guys including me? I want to be a part of this too. And I want to help out with these particular things. And, I just want that deep, meaningful relationship with you guys also. The conversations continue to be like, oh, we thought you were busy. Oh, we didn't do it to be personal. Oh, we just wanted to keep it small. It's weird responses, but again, making peace with those. But now that vulnerability of going back into situations where you have made the decision to continue these relationships, to try to heal the areas and rebuild the areas that you can, to take steps back and create distance, to admit, okay, they clearly don't want the depth of a relationship that I want or expect or believe that I deserve with these individuals. And so when you do all those things and you've taken those steps back, you still get that fear that rears its ugly head when the next event comes up, when the next interaction comes up, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to make myself vulnerable again. Or when you even, I mean, we live in a social media world. You don't even have to go to an event to be confronted with being excluded. There's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's TikTok, there's all the different platforms that let us know you were the only one that wasn't in attendance. Don't take it personal. And so, you don't have to face the fear or the vulnerability when you're actually going back into face-to-face situations, although sometimes that will be the instance. There are many times where your vulnerability will come into view when you just open up the app and now you're being confronted with these emotional wounds and these feelings of being offended, whether the people intend to offend you or not, whether they believe they're being offensive or not is a whole other story. But your feelings are still valid and still need to be worked through and rationalized with and deeper meanings assessed so that you can apply whatever changes you need to apply. You can heal whatever negative emotions that you have, and you can make whatever important decisions you need to make about rebuilding or severing relationships with individuals. And, having that plan. We need to take all these steps so that we develop a plan. And then we know what we're going to do. So we know what we're going to do or not do when we open up the social media. We know what we're going to do and not do when we see this collective of individuals at the next interaction, at the next event. And now we're talking about these other instances where we weren't included. So let me give you the spoiler alert. You're going to get hurt again. It might not be by the same people because you might be like some of the people I know, like one and done, or second time, that's it. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. There will not be a third time. I know a lot of people who are like that, and it works for them. They don't have a very big circle of people in their lives, but they're like, look, the quality of people in my life, they get me. They deserve a spot at my table. I'm not putting up with people's crap. So maybe we can adopt something valuable from that type of a mindset where you're just not tolerating certain things. I come from a different background. I come from a different time. And I am much more tolerant and much more accepting and much more willing to just forgive and move on and continue in relationships than people who are 10 and 20 years younger than I am. Times have changed. We live in a culture now where people are less patient and less tolerant of just being abused or being treated poorly. And we can learn something from each other. I always say that when I'm talking to one of my daughters, for instance. We say these things to each other, but I just said to you, and it's like, I can learn something from your third time is not going to happen mindset, and you can learn something from me, which is, slow down for a second, and before you make that call on the third time, make sure you've seen the whole situation, make sure you've expanded your perspective, and you're not operating in haste without all the information. And so we can learn something from each other and maybe find this happy medium where it's like, okay, this is how we handle this. And there's no one formula. I can't tell you how you're going to have to do that and make it work in your life. I can say to you, if there's an area in your life that you really feel wounded and you're chronically dealing with in all these different areas, it may be time for you to revisit your boundaries and your life playbook, your survival guide, and start to develop new strategies and a plan and a map, and then stick to it. You got to use it like a playbook. You got to stick to it and don't deviate from it. And there might be some hard decisions that you have to make there to protect yourself, to say, I cannot keep putting myself into the situation where I'm chronically being abused, where I'm chronically being preyed on by the same caliber of individual who is offensive, intentionally exploiting the situation, taking advantage of it. So, if that speaks to you, then you might have to take different steps than a person who this was like a one-time thing and they're not stuck in some chronic pattern of this repeat thing happening over and over and over again. So what we choose to do with this emotion, this feeling of dread and fear of being made vulnerable again and opening up those wounds, is what determines our short and long-term progress in that journey toward continuing to grow into that version of ourselves. So we have to keep coming back to, what are our morals? What are our beliefs? What are our goals, our desires? What do we hope to accomplish in the short-term areas of our life? What about the long-term plan? We need to think about those things. And we must know this plan better than anybody else knows the plan, and we must operate in a forgiveness mindset, and we must stick to that. So sometimes we're going to get triggered to misbehave, to fall out of course with what we say we want our moral fiber and character to be. And we have to be really grounded to that. And then we have to forgive ourselves when we fall off, because you're going to fail. We're going to fail. We're human. So you're going to fail, and then you have to forgive yourself, and you got to quickly get back on track. Don't let somebody hijack you and completely demolish all of the hard work that you put into yourself. They're not worth it. If they have offended you and can trigger you and just suck you back into that snake pit, they are not worth it. I'm going to say that. So let that sink in. They're not worth it. Do not let anybody suck you back into the pit. It's not worth it. You've put a lot of hard work into yourself to this point. Just get back on track. You get knocked down, dust it off, get back up, get back at it. You get right back to where you were, or you take a few steps back to get back on track. Sometimes when we're in a situation, we are confronted with this offense or this crisis or this moment where we're wounded or hurt, and we get that fight, flight, or freeze mentality. And these are radically different approaches, or these are radically different reactions to an instance where we are being offended or we are being wounded. Our goals and our end vision need to align with how we operate here. So if we are trying to maintain a certain caliber of character and we've got to get the heck out of that situation, like just leave. Sometimes there is no rationalizing with someone. You just need to get out of there. So if you need to get out of there and that's part of your playbook and that's part of the plan that you came up with, like, okay, I have a plan when I am confronted with this type of experience that leads to offense and leads to abuse, I have a plan and I'm going to follow that plan. I'm going to take this step, then I'm going to do that. You have to stick to your plan. You have to be willing to follow the playbook, follow your survival guide. You wrote it. You should know it, but sometimes we need to go back and revisit what the heck did we say we were going to do in this instance? So you have to be very familiar with what you're going to do in those situations because everything has to be moving you toward those end goals and that vision that you have for your desired outcomes. And I've talked about this a lot in the different episodes. We have to have an awareness about which interactions and relationships that we will fight for. We have to be aware of it before we even get into contact with individuals. We have to know what the state of affairs are with individuals. I'm not talking about first-time encounters, although there's a lot to be said about that. If you get into a first-time encounter and you find yourself in a fight situation, you're probably not going to want to return to that situation. You're probably not going to want to build anything meaningful with that individual or within that situation. Like this might not be your people. This might not be your community of people. So you might be fighting for, whatever, fighting for that, moment of respect that you think you deserve in that instance, or that acceptance, or the provision of particular things that you came for to begin with. I don't know, fill in the blank. You might be fighting for your rights. You might be fighting for that place at the table. You might be fighting to hold someone accountable in that instance. Hey, you are offending me right now. Hey, what you're doing is not acceptable. The situation's always going to be different. So you have to figure out which one of these qualities apply to it, and then you have to act accordingly. So there might be those instances where you are fighting in that one and done situation where you're like, okay, it's worth it. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? There are times when I'm like, I am not going to rationalize with irrational people. Not going to do it. So if I see a flicker of rationality or being able to reason with someone, then I will argue with you, or I will debate something with you and keep trying to get us conversing, even if you've offended me. A lot of times that's what people do. They offend the other person to make them feel stupid, to make themselves feel superior and the smarter person about something. And it's a logical fallacy. We see it happening in politics all the time. And so if you find yourself in that situation and you're like, you have to make that choice. Am I going to engage in this exchange right now and fight for that person to open their thinking? Or am I going to just be like, lost cause, not my problem, not my circus, not my clowns? We have to make that decision. And then there's that third temptation, which is to freeze. And most times it's not an option, especially when we're talking about this idea of operating in a forgiveness mindset or opening ourselves up to vulnerability and reopening wounds. Freeze isn't always a viable option. The first two episodes explore the importance of identifying and grieving our hurts and offenses as we walk in forgiveness. So again, it's really important for us to identify those things and then go through the healing process and the grieving process, so that now when we get to this step where we're actually getting back out there, we have some insights, we have some plans and strategies moving forward. So we might be afraid of making ourselves vulnerable. We might be anxious about that. We might have doubts about that vulnerability or what it's going to feel like to have those wounds reopened. That's natural. Who the heck wants to keep suffering? I don't know anybody who wants to keep suffering. But we also have to get back out there. This idea of confronting our fear of vulnerability and doing things despite that fear of reopening wounds is a really important component of preparing us to move forward and showing us how. So we can keep identifying what. But until we start thinking about how exactly are we going to do that, we're stuck. You can have all the knowledge of what to do. If somebody never shows you how to do it, if that never resonates with you or clicks with you, like, oh, I get it, I see all the moving parts, I see how this works, then you just have a bunch of knowledge and you have no wisdom to know what to do with that knowledge. That's like the equivalent of rote memorization, where you used to go to school, take the test, it would be multiple choice, and you would stay up all night making study cards, memorizing, what's the answer to this? What's the answer to that? And then you would go take the test and you have no idea. You're not learning any concepts. You have no idea of what the concepts are. You come back from the test and you forget about almost all of it, if not all of it, because you weren't trying to learn and understand and remember those concepts. You were just trying to memorize them so that you could do well on a testing situation and then move on. And we can't have that same mentality when we're talking about how to navigate our fear of being vulnerable, because we do have to get ourselves back out there and we have to make ourselves vulnerable again. And sometimes those wounds are going to get opened back up. And in those instances where they do get opened back up, then we have to go back to a lot of those concepts that I talked about in the second episode, which was dealing with those grief stages. Now, again, I talk about those in my self-help book, Warrior Sister, Cut Yourself Free. There is a link to this book and how to buy copies of it or even get access to the audio version of it in the show notes, because we want to reach that point where we are the best prepared that we can be when we do move forward and we do get ourselves back out there, which means that we've got to do that work to get our heart matter aligned with our desires, our goals, that spiritual journey that we're on. Let's wrap this session up with a recap of some important steps that we can take to navigate our fears and make ourselves vulnerable and thus susceptible to more heartache and offense. I know, I'm giving you such encouraging news right now. But since we can't live in a protected bubble, we have to heal and then put ourselves back out there. Or in some instances, we have to make the tough decision if we're going to return to it at all. So remember these things when fear and dread rear their ugly little heads. We deserve to open ourselves up again for a chance to receive the things that we crave. That's the crux of it all here. If we don't, they win. They win. That's what gets me up every day and keeps me moving again. That's what gets me investing in myself and putting myself first and making sure that I am in the best possible emotional shape that I can be in so that I can be the best version of myself for myself and then for all of those others that are around me. We need to get ourselves back out there and we need to be very familiar with our playbook and how we are going to function once we are back out there. Unforgiveness, remember, is that toxic cocktail that makes us sick and miserable to be around. Don't pick it up. Don't drink it. Don't even take a sip of it. Don't even smell the cap. It isn't an option if we want to maintain our emotional health and well-being. Choose to forgive and release it to those higher powers. Let God deal with it. Let the universe deal with it. When you think about justice, which we are going to talk about next episode, when you think about justice and accountability, think about you don't have to be the one who orchestrates it. You can release it, let that folly catch up with them in whichever way the universe or God decides to deliver it. Again, think about how justice and accountability usually play out. More justice than accountability. Do you really want to decide what that justice should look like and then become the character that has to enforce and deliver that level of justice? I know I don't want to be that person. That's why I didn't go into law. I was originally going to study law right out of high school. And I went to work with one of my close friends at the time who was a paralegal. And I think I spent 2 weeks there in the offices helping her work and deciding if I wanted to do an internship there. And I was like, no way. I do not want to be around these people, this environment for the rest of my life. Like, these are not my people. I knew that at 18, these aren't my people. I don't want to be day in, day out thinking about what is justice going to look like for these individuals. And that's awesome if that applies to you and that is your world, but it wasn't my world. And I knew that I wanted my heart to remain soft and my compassion to stay intact. And it wasn't going to stand a chance if I fully immersed myself into this community. So I have no regrets about living a life ever since then of releasing people, forgiving and letting the universe and God bring whatever justice is coming their way. And a lot of times we don't even get to see that justice, and it's okay, because it's enough to know that everything catches up with people. Even if it seems like it doesn't, like there are people that seem like, oh, they get away with murder all the time. It catches up with them one way or another. And it really isn't up to us to see how it is. It's up to us to protect our own peace and to worry about our own selves. We will continue to explore working through unforgiveness and strengthening our forgiveness mindset in the remaining 3 episodes in this series. Until we meet again, may these new insights and strategies be a lamp unto your path and a guide on your emotional healing journey. And let me say it, if you haven't heard anybody say it to you yet today, I'm really proud of all the hard work you've already put into your emotional healing and adopting this forgiveness mindset. See you next episode.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. Also, if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. And as you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Ciao.